To teach not taking things personally is not one more way of how can I blame myself for everything. And it is not another way to let everyone else off the hook. It is to help us to focus on the most effective ways to respond when we are in emotional distress.
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
I'm Tom Rutledge. With me, my good friend and man I've spent a lot of quality time with in the last 14, 15 months, Dr. Alan Berger. How you doing, Alan?
Tom, great. I mean, it's so true, isn't it? I mean, if we were living close to each other, we wouldn't have spent as much time as we
No. I've had friends who we've moved closer together because we like to spend more time and we see less of each other. It's like it's such a weird thing. But no, you and I have spent some seriously quality time. This it is one of my favorite silver linings of all of this. Unfortunate crisis with the pandemic, and but I'm glad to do that, and I love the work that we're doing that's coming out of that, and I love being included in that. And speaking of the work we're doing, I know you'll probably mention it somewhere along the line, or Patrick, but this week is the week of your virtual book release party. I'm so excited about that. Looking forward to it on Thursday.
And you're gonna be participating in that. I've asked some of my closest friends and colleagues to read a portion of the book and then discuss however they're moved by that portion. I'm so excited about it. It's on Thursday night at 7 p.m. And if you want to come and you're listening to this podcast, it's open to everyone. We already have 200 people signed up for the book release party. We got room for 300 more. So come on down, so to speak.
Come on. Yeah.
If you go to now, this is the number 4D PhD. So 4dphd.com. If you go to that website, you can RSVP and you will be sent the Zoom ID and the link next week, and love to have you join us.
And 4D, for people who don't know, that's because your publisher is Fourth Dimension Publishing, right?
That's right. The Fourth Dimension Publishing House. And it's taken off of that thing that if we can be rocketed in recovery to the fourth dimension. And you and I we're really been talking about how emotional sobriety is that engine that rockets us into that fourth dimension. It really provides.
I like that it's the engine that rockets us into it, as opposed to emotional sobriety is the fourth dimension. It's like who the hell knows what all we're heading to. But I've noticed my language about talking about emotional sobriety has evolved to I've actually noticed I use the phrase the teachings of emotional sobriety. It's like it really is. These are all things that and hopefully we wouldn't be putting ourselves out here as having some expertise with this if we didn't believe that we have something to share about that. But we also always make that point, not with any false humility, but with just genuine humility, that we're all in process here. We're all works in progress, and we're learning as we go. And which is one of the things I love about the way we do our work, which is, we can come on here one week and then next week I can come back and go, hey, remember that thing I said last time about so-and-so? I now completely disagree with myself and have changed to thinking this way. And that's not seen as, I failed because I was wrong about something, but it's seen as growth.
Yes, very true. And look, that's, to me, when you were sharing that, what came to my mind is how much you and I have just extended this discussion of emotional sobriety this last year. I mean, here in our podcast that started with a podcast to help people get through COVID, then turned into Start Right Here. And then we
Yep.
decided it's about emotional sobriety, the next step in your recovery. And we've dedicated our podcast to that. And I experienced this growth with you as well. In fact, the topic that part 2 of the topic that we're talking about today, this not taking things personally, I see that as an extension of what Bill originally talked about, because in his letter, he never talked about not taking things personally. I mean, you can see that there's some kind of reference to that and you can extrapolate to that, but applying this idea to it was never really explicitly or overtly stated by Bill. And it's such an important part, as we talked about in part 1. Look, you can listen to part 2. You'll get a lot out of this, but I would encourage you, if you haven't listened to part 1, go back to last week's podcast, put it on and play it, because it's really foundational to what we're talking about today. And what we said we wanted to do is we wanted to go beyond just what Don Miguel Ruiz started in his discussion of stop taking things personally in his wonderful book, The 4 Agreements, which I think is wonderful. You know, he talked about that book as being, I always love this title. He says it's a practical guide to personal freedom. And that's what emotional sobriety is. It is a guide to emotional freedom, is that we're really going beyond the ideas, the connections that we had before that so much tied us into everything that's happened around us to determine who we were.
Yep.
And we're moving to that other space where now we're finding a way to become that determining force in our lives, rather than letting our lives be determined by all these things around us. So that's where I wanted to start this with, Tom. And so let me share this and you see what you think about it.
Okay.
The way I was thinking about this beforehand, I'm like you. I have these musings like 10 minutes before the show, right?
Yep.
And I was thinking today, you know, how do we want to extend this discussion? And I think what happens is, what sets us up to take things personally is this focus we have on needing environmental support to be okay. And as you and I talked about, dependency is not necessarily a bad thing. My God, if we weren't dependent on our mom when we were in the womb for everything, we wouldn't be here today. I mean, we needed her. We needed her to be willing to provide us with everything she provided us with in order to be able to be out here and to have this show and to talk about. So Mom, wherever you are out there, thank you. Thanks for doing all that and putting up with all the stuff that he had to put up for me. Because I know there was a time in my life where you wouldn't have given a wooden nickel's chance about what kind of life I would have.
If she were a betting woman, that's right.
You put a wooden nickel on it. That's how much she was in that bet. She wouldn't. But see, that's the thing that you and I discovered. There's something in us. And that is what you and I celebrate all the time in working with people. You know, I love how you say it. Sometimes you're sitting there and seeing somebody in pain and you're smiling. Yeah. And it's not because you're a sadistic bastard. No,
that's a whole different thing.
that's another. That's for another show and another.
Yeah. That's a different topic.
But no, what you said to me, and I so identified this when you said it, because you know, you were just more honest about it than I've been before. You just said, I sit there smiling because I know the journey they're going on.
Yeah.
I know what this is going to mean for them.
It's like you see the beginnings and remember, see, because we rearrange our own memory. You know, that we talk about in addiction recovery. We talk about euphoric recall and stuff and the dangers it has, where we just remember the good things about the alcohol and drugs or whatever. But euphoric recall is a concept that is really is important to understand throughout all of this. And one of the things is we rearrange our memories as we go along. And one of the things is, in some ways, it happens because we tell our story, and it's a good thing. But to tell a story is a longer process than actually going through our story. So a lot of times we have associated these positive, wonderful things that have come from the struggle and the suffering that we volunteered for in therapy, and we forget that we didn't know our ass in a hole in the ground when that day when that began. It's like, it's not like, oh, good, here's something that's really, it's just like, very often, when a therapist would say something to me that I now quote, regularly, the first time they said it to me, I thought, what a fucking idiot. We're smiling because we know that the pain they're feeling is going to be part of something really, really important to them.
That's right.
And it's our way of sharing too. You're going to love this, whether you get it or not right now. If you, to the degree that you can trust me, this is really a good path.
That's right. And, you and I have seen that a lot. And even the Thursday night meeting since we started the emotional sobriety thing. I mean, my God, people are coming in and light bulbs are like popping all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't too worried about what if they never learned the lesson?
Like, you mean in general, or?
Well, I suppose, the pain that people are going through, there's not a concern, I guess, that maybe they'll be crushed by it, or maybe they'll take the wrong door number 1, door number 2. And
I mean, they have choices, and they may I think I see your point. And if it's like, I don't know that I have a point. Yeah. The point. Well, then here's the point I hear in that, which is, by the way, just because I see something, recognize it, and believe it's somebody's great potential, doesn't mean that they're going to make the choices to follow that through. It's like, whatever it is I'm saying at that time, and I think this is probably true for you, Alan, as well. Whatever I'm saying to them at the time is just my part in encouraging them to stay on that path. Because, sir, I have a concern that they're not going. I mean, if somebody were to say, well, this person may not stay on there, that would concern me. But in light of what we're talking about not taking things personally, that's not my focus. My focus is not they have to do that in order for me to be okay either. Right. That's one of those places where you can sound kind of harsh as a therapist when you're going it's not going, I will feel when people don't do well, or people relapse, or people don't make it. I definitely have feelings about that. But one of the things I don't do is I don't take all of that responsibility on. I take the responsibility that is my responsibility to do my job in the best, as Sheldon Kopp says, and Back to One, to always do impeccable work. My job in the moment is to do that. But it's like, but the truth is also, when I'm in those spots with those people, I'm usually feeling pretty positive about them because they're there and they're being honest with their feelings, and it usually means they're going to make it.
And I that's the way I would say it, Patrick. I don't think that we're so focused on the outcome. We're more focused on having faith.
Yeah.
That a faith based on the deep knowledge and experience of what's inside each one of us, that Tom's experienced personally, that I've experienced personally, that I see happening in your life, that I see happening in hundreds, thousands, and millions of other people that have found a new way of life that's based on, a willingness to use some different principles in their life, right? Mm-hmm. To find a set of ideas and concepts that can really invite that person's, what I would call healthy self, if you will, recovery self, into participating in their life, instead of being given all this privilege to my addict self or my worst self. My God, I gave so much privilege to that part of me. Tom described the relationship to the addict self once as a command obey relationship. This part says jump, I say how high. I mean, and that turned around. That part says jump, I say no. I don't want to do that today. That doesn't make sense to me. I know that's what you think is a good idea, but I see where that goes now, and I don't need to go along with that. I know you think that that's part of the solution for things, but I think there's a better one for me. So we get into this new dialogue that's so exciting. But let me take this where I was going with this environmental support. So there's nothing wrong with us having this idea that we need the environment, support from the environment, to be okay. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have that support. Right. If the atmosphere I was in didn't provide oxygen, I'm in trouble. I can't do this alone. I need my environment to provide certain things. I need relationships. We need relationships. Early on,
we don't take it personally. If we say I can't breathe, well, we don't take it personally. It's like
it's right. But that's an interesting observation. See, there's a whole different dialogue that goes on with the biological imperative than goes on with the psychological imperative. Right. The psychological imperative, that attachment to my mom and to my caregivers, my dad, was so important, because just like I thought I needed the oxygen, I did need their love and support to get through those early years, to help me learn how to show up in this culture that I'm in, to impart the culture to me, to impart some ideas about how to cope and survive. Now, as an infant and as a child, I couldn't be critical about what they were providing because I didn't have that cognitive ability yet.
Right. We have no contrast. Even if we had cognitive ability, even when we get older, we don't have a contrast. We're not looking at a book that's describing healthy families.
We don't have that. There's no way that normal is what is happening in my family. That's my normal for me.
Right.
And that's why we say, Tom and I, we've seen this on some of our clients' faces. We'll say, wow, that wasn't normal. And they'll go, wait a minute. You mean what was going on in my family wasn't normal? No, it was. And they're going, oh my goodness gracious me.
Oh, I remember that. I remember when I got into therapy, especially when I got involved in doing groups as a client, it's like, I always say, the way I say it in hindsight is the longer I stayed in therapy, the sicker my family got, because I go, that's not right. You mean, oh my God, that my mama did that too. It's like, and it's not just dissing the whole family. It's just understand. It's about, I always say it's not about blame. It's about explanation. We're learning about how we came to be the way we are. And that's one of yours and my favorite parts of this, is because, as we've often said, is our job is ultimately to show people how they're not crazy. That basically it's sort you look at what your norm was and we say, well, how the hell would you have come out any other way?
So our desire to please and cooperate comes from a strong survival instinct. I need my mom, my dad to be attached to me and to be concerned, to help me grow in this and to be what I can be. Now, they can only help me to whatever degree that they were able to grow and become what they could be, to whatever degree of emotional maturity or differentiation, however you want to call it or talk about it, is fine with me. I'm not, I don't care about the words we use. I just care about the process. So my focus on what's going on in the environment was very important. I had to figure out, was this pleasing to her or not? I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to belong. That was very important for me. So my focus on that and trying to figure out how to get my parents to do that. And the first thing I did to do it was I smiled at them. A baby smiles in their, there was this one, I forgot kids cartoon, and it was about these puppies smiling, and it was like, don't watch the puppy smile, or don't watch the puppy's face because it's too cute. You're going to get bonded to the puppy and then you're going to want to buy it. See, it's that whole thing, is because that's what happens. That's what I'm trying to do to cement that attachment, right? To participate in it. But if I'm in a healthy situation, my parents are going to help me grow and differentiate myself from them. But not many parents understand that and can really participate in our development in that way. They get threatened, if you will. They get threatened by, if I'm different than what they think I should be, oh my God, it's a bad reflection on them. Yeah. See, so now there's this pull to be what they think I should be, rather than to support me to be what I am.
I love the example you give about the child who does the drawing and then brings that to the parent. Because when did you learn that? Was that after you had children or before?
Well, I learned that from Dr. Kempler. That's one of the things that he would talk about so much, is that the importance of seeing a child. The two things a child needs to differentiate is to be seen and to be celebrated. I'm so glad that you're a part of my life. I'm glad you were born. And also, I see who you are, and you don't need to be. In fact, I want you to be what you are, not what I think you should be.
Well, one of the correct me if I'm wrong here, one of the jobs of the parent is to be a mirror for the child. So what you're reflecting back in that way is the child, not you. And a lot what happened, and what you've made, and I think it's an important point to emphasize that in terms of looking at all this stuff from in our past and our families with compassion, is that our parents are limited by their own developmental issues, and so that's so we always want people to know, because often they feel disloyal talking about family when they come into therapy, that we're, again, that's where I say it's not about blame, it's about explanation, it's about coming to understand this so that we can make the changes that we need to make for you. It's like because a lot of times, well, there are exceptions to this rule, but for most of us, we could easily say, no, whatever we were getting was the very best that they got, because they loved us, and that's, we're not ever here to take that away. But the example you're talking about, which is, if I remember correctly, the one about just saying, oh, good, the drawing is good, is reflecting back, oh, you seem so excited about having drawn this. You see, it was a really great process for you. That's a you're the mirror that's basically showing the child, rather than just showing your response, which becomes almost a behavioral learning thing, right? If I do this, then I do good,
Right.
And I get my treat or whatever. Yeah.
And also part of that development, Patrick, is to not be afraid to frustrate your children. And I don't mean sadistically. Once again, it's not. I want my kids.
Alan has no fear of this. Apparently, I don't know. We're going to talk to. That's another session. That's another session too.
Bring the kids on and let them talk. But so if I say no and I don't want to do something, and it's a genuine no, it's okay that Cece or Maddie get upset with me. Now they learn that in reality, things aren't going to always happen the way they want them to. And so it's also not my job as a parent to do everything they want. And some parents forget that and they get lost.
Well, and what they learn too is that love doesn't go away. It's not conditional. It's like, no, all the stability, all this, the other stuff is there's not, in my family, would be emotionally punished, by not doing the thing that our parents wanted. My parents wanted. It's like, the idea is they learn only by doing that do they actually learn about unconditional.
Yes.
Because it's like they're mad, they're upset, they may say mean things to you, and you're still there putting them to bed and tucking them in and being sweet to them. Yeah.
So here I am, right? I'm focusing on the environment. Is my environment going to meet my needs? Because I'm so dependent at that point. At some point in time, we know about this biologically, physically. I walk for myself. My mom doesn't have to carry me. I'm able to get around. I'm able to run. I'm able to now start to differentiate from my need to be carried around, right? So I'm now starting to literally and psychologically moving towards standing on my own 2 feet. But see, parents support physical differentiation a lot better than they know how to support psychological and emotional differentiation.
Yeah.
It's the physical happens. It's a biological imperative. You're going to move that way. You have to work hard to stop a kid from walking. I mean, you really do, because that force is so great. They want to do it themselves. You don't even have to tell a child to do it. A kid wants to talk. They want to find a way to communicate. They want to make connection. That is just built into a kid, unless they've got some difficulties, some neurological difficulties that are preventing them from learning language. But what I'm saying is the psychological part is it takes a more intentional approach to help a kid stand on their own 2 feet psychologically. Let's say, Patrick, you're at school and you come home, I'm your dad, and you say to me, Dad, God, Billy didn't want to play with me today. I'm so upset. I don't think he wants to be my friend anymore. Now, how do I respond to that? How do I respond to my son, Patrick, who's obviously in emotional pain? I could say, and this would come from trying to be a good parent. I could say, don't worry about Billy. Who cares what Billy thinks? You're okay. I love you. You're a great kid. Now, I'm trying to help you. And everything I'm trying to do is to try to help you feel okay about it. But what I've just done is I've dismissed your feelings and I haven't really addressed what's going on with you. So I'm not helping you learn how to cope with things other than telling you that you shouldn't be bothered by that. Well, great. Now, as you get bothered by it, all you can do is feel what? Shame. God, something must be wrong with me. Why can't I do what Dad told me to do, not worry about what Billy's thinking about? That wasn't very helpful, even though I did it with the best intent in mind to help my son.
How discouraging is that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dog ear that for a second, Alan, because I want to see where you're going with that. But one of the things I want to say is that because I have, because I've heard from, I hear people sometimes who trying to get some clarification and I'm not taking things personally. And that's exactly what they misinterpret as being said is, oh, don't worry about it, because what you're actually literally saying is don't take Billy personally. But it's like the whole idea of not taking things personally is about it's a method of going inside ourselves and understanding ourselves better and taking better care of ourselves. And so the idea is it doesn't mean we're not telling people don't care about other people. We're not even saying don't care about what they think. What we're saying is this is where the process starts.
Yes.
That's
right.
one of the best 12-step principles that I live by, which is always start on your side of the street. It doesn't mean that they don't have a shitload of work to do over there, and whether they'll do it or not, I don't know. But it's like, I love that you said that, because I want people to know we're not ever saying, oh, fuck Billy, we don't care about Billy, so no. We love you, so everything's okay. It's like, no, we got to go a different route, which is where you're going with this.
Right. I'm so glad you dog-eared that, because that is so important, because that can be easily misinterpreted to mean that. And I get it. I can see you and I have had many people come back and say that. Or you say, what do you mean? Well, sure, now
one more thing that's all my fault. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I can't do that. Oh boy. Now contrast that. If I said to you, wow, son, that really is bothering you. I can tell you're very concerned about what just happened today at lunch. So first of all, I take a moment to connect and have empathy with you. I can see you're terribly upset. And now I go into a certain kind of inquiry with you. I say, what do you think that says about you that Billy went and played with somebody else? Tell me what that means to you, son. So now, as Tom says, I start to explore it with you. You tell me what that would mean, what that meant to you. What do you think that's saying about you? And after you talk about that for a while, I might say, what do you think it might be saying about Billy that he didn't want to play today? Now I give you a chance to think about what that might mean about Billy and what's going on. If I hear that you're interpreting some of that personally, I could say, well, maybe there are times when you don't want to play with Billy too. Does that mean you don't want Billy to be your friend? And then you go, oh, wait a minute. No, there's times that I haven't played with Billy. It didn't mean. So is it possible that Billy might be thinking that? You see, so what I get you to do is I start to get you inquisitive, as Tom was just saying, investigating your reaction, not dismissing it, and giving you little clues on how you might be able to unhook this and not take it personally.
Do you find that children have this capacity to actually do that? God, that's amazing.
I got to practice. So listen to this, Tom. I thought you'd love what you hear. Little Maddie. So we're in the car. We're moving to Pennsylvania. So this was classic. She goes, Dad, how do you think people in Pennsylvania feel about people from California?
Wow.
You guys can hear that? Can you hear what she's asking? Dad, am I going to be acceptable in Pennsylvania? What's it going to be like in terms of, are they going to like me? Or are they going to not like me? Because we're moving there, you guys know that.
Yeah, right. So the first thing you have to do is not tell them the truth, which is that people from Pennsylvania don't like you Californians. Right?
I go, well,
I'll tell you this from Tennessee. Nobody understands you people.
We get to the airport in Philadelphia. If you're from California, please go back. Right?
Let's just talk. I'm speaking for all the other states. None of us understands you people.
So, but you guys get the anxiety, right?
Yeah,
what is she afraid of? Am I going to be
Am-
liked?
am
What
I-
are
am
people
I
going
go-
to think
yeah.
about me there? You know, this is
Mhm.
what I was saying before. This is such a built-in concern
That's great.
because we need that. Now, you know, my first response is to say to her, wow, I can hear that you're really concerned about that, honey. Aren't you? You're really worried about Dad. Yeah. You know, what if they don't like me? You know, she started, what if they don't like Californians? By time we finished the conversation, it was, what if they don't like me?
Right.
Because you notice how she started with it. She tried
It's
to,
safer that way.
right,
Mhm,
Californians.
mhm.
Well, maybe I can just lie and I'm not from California. If they don't like Californians, I'll just lie. That's what my solution would have been as a kid.
That's it.
Well, hey, I'm not part Jewish. I'm all Italian.
That's right.
I did, swear to God, I did that.
What states do you like? It's like
Yeah, that's right. But you could see the concern is, so now if I go into that inquiry I was telling you about, well, what do you think it would say about them? What would it say about you? Then the next important question is, what do you think you could do about that with you and Billy? What would you like to do about that? What would you like to say to Billy about it? What do you think would be a good thing to talk about? If you know, were you able to tell Billy you wanted to play with him too? Were you able to ask for what you needed? You see, instead of then being a passive observer to our lives, I can encourage her. What could you do to try to get your needs met instead of just letting what Billy is doing determine what goes on? Or for you, Patrick, I'm confusing you with Maddie right now. Let me differentiate. You know, but if I was talking to you, I would say, what do you think you could do with Billy? By the way, did you tell Billy that you wanted to play with him? No, he just went and played with someone else. Wow. Was there any other possibility? What if you went up to him and said, hey, I want to play too? Is that you see, so what I'm doing is helping a kid develop this ability to take care of themselves, differentiate themselves, and become that active, determining force in their own life.
Yeah, and see, here's the thing: there's content and process here. It's like you're also you're not actually talking to Maddie. You're not talking to a little girl about process, but you are working in process because you're teaching, because you are the model, and she is and when she goes through many of those experiences, which she's already been through, where you're guiding her through, and you're responding to things like this with questions and helping. She's learning to explore this stuff, because so many people just learn when our feelings are hurt, we shut it down. Yeah. I'm working with a couple right now, and I've worked with many couples through the years. It's like, just to get them to ask a few questions after their feelings are hurt is really a big deal. And they're often surprised that they can still do it. And it's like, well, so what's happening is not only this particular, she may or may not remember one day, her nervousness about moving from Pennsylvania to California to Pennsylvania, but she is integrating that process of inquiry that you're talking about, that people personal, that because that's when you talk about the environment, not depending on the environment, what we're always talking about is inside out, not outside in. Right. And when you're teaching, when you're doing that, whether that be talking to Patrick, who is asshole Billy is messing with him, or Maddie with her move, it's like you're teaching them that distress is the beginning of a process.
Yes.
Not the place to retreat, not the place to deny, not the place to run, to duck and cover. It's like, no, this is where we just get interested. We get, you and I talk to clients all the time. This is fascinating to me. I'll say, let's get curious together about this.
And it's so great doing this with you, because that's such an important thing you just pointed out. I'm teaching her how to stay engaged with what is happening instead of avoiding it.
Yeah.
Right. And so many of us, because we don't have the tools, we want to avoid that. God, that friendship might be risky. I've got to have certainty that this is going to be okay, that it's going to be this way, or else I don't want to be friends with them.
And we could, the three of us consider, we could come up with a large list of really loving, positive, well-intended attempts at reassurance to that child, what Maddie said, that would actually be shutting it down.
Right. Like I could say, Billy's a jerk. That kid
Mhm.
Billy, he did that again to you. Oh
Yeah.
my God, you shouldn't
Or
be
with
Billy.
Maddie, but with Maddie, you could also just say no, they like them fine, everything's going to be okay. It's like, okay, well, pause. Anybody have a problem with this? So go like, well, no, I get that, but it's like I wrote about reassurance a lot in Embracing Fear, and one of the things I came up with, and that is that in order for it to be helpful, reassurance has to be credible. And so, if I tell you that I'm afraid of something, and you say with good intentions, oh, don't be, you don't have to be. Right. I go, what I'm saying, I'm probably nodding at you on the outside, but inside I'm saying, fuck you. That's, but for you to go there with me, that's the process of finding reassurance.
Yes.
And that's what you're helping her find.
That's right. That's right. So look, this focus on others, and why we end up taking it personally, because early on, that's really where things were at. And when we talk about our failure to grow up, is our failure to differentiate our helplessness or near helplessness as a child with our agency as an adult. See, this becomes such a critical thing, is I can do a lot more with that than I could at 5 years old, or that Maddie can at 8. I'm going to try to help Maddie figure it out a lot more, but she is very focused on how's that going to be? Because right now, what goes on in our family determines her, she can influence it to some degree, but mom and dad are creating the atmosphere here. So this movement towards now standing on our own 2 feet. And that's what's so exciting to me about this emotional sobriety stuff. This is the process of us growing up, of moving from an undifferentiated state to a differentiated state, moving from being completely dependent on our environment for support to now learning how to support ourselves in relationship to our environment. It's not that we become an island unto ourselves. That's not what we're teaching here. We're teaching we stay in relationship to our environment, but we have a healthier relationship with it.
Well, and what this exercise is, this exercise is reminding me that the earlier in our lives that this process can take place, the less fucked we are. in later life.
I mean, I'd like to be Maddie today. I mean, I wish I
was, yeah.
I wish somebody would expose me to this stuff. I mean, I'm still figuring this out at 69. And, hopefully in 20 years, when we celebrate 20 years on the show together at 89, I'll say, my God, I've gotten a little farther on this, but my God, wouldn't it have been great if any of us had this stuff early on in our life?
Yeah. Plus, I promise you, this is the truth. I've already worked with many people who are children of recovering addicts, and meaning they were born after their parents were in recovery. And it's like therapists will never be out of work. It's a whole other thing. It's like we have children of adult children of alcoholics. You can have adult children of recovering alcoholics. It's like, see, Maddie's going to be in therapy, and the therapist is going to be asking them questions, and she's going to be going like, just stop asking all these questions. I grew up just surrounded by people who were so interested and curious about me and always wanting to know more about what I was feeling. Good. Could you just tell me what to do? That's right. It's always a balancing act.
About finding that balance between 2 things and stuff. But look, what I want you to hear when you're listening to this show is that this taking things personally grew out of this and need for our environmental support. We all needed that. Yes. And it's not that you're wrong for doing that. It's just a step in your development, or a step along the way in your development is a better way to say that. Tom and I have really tried to emphasize over and over again, don't pathologize yourself. Don't make yourself wrong. Don't shame yourself. Don't look at yourself in that way. I want you to look at yourself as having all of these possibilities to become what you can be. And we can all do that once we start to figure some of this stuff out and put some of these ideas in a different order and in a different way. And it starts to open up all kinds of new doors and
New
windows,
possibilities.
possibilities.
Yeah, it's let me. I'm going to read something if that's okay. I'm going to just a couple short paragraphs that I was trying to put together before. I was telling you before we went on that I was trying to do this, but it's just a clarification because this is in response to a couple of people that I've heard talk about. Is that, or I don't think they didn't say it this way, but I could tell that it was, don't worry about what Billy says, stuff they were, or the other thing they would be hearing is, oh, so if my feelings are hurt and it's not because that person had did it to me, that means that I'm to blame for this. And it's like, so one of the things we're talking about is and this goes throughout the whole process of emotional sobriety, is distinguishing very clearly between responsibility and blame. Responsibility moves. We can talk about that a lot more in the future, but responsibility moves forward. Blame drops an anchor in the moment and then leaves us and gets us stuck in the past. But here's what I wrote as a clarification for someone that had asked me about this. And I want to see what you think about this because if you like it, it's going in the book we're working on. So I'm in the process of working on our book. To teach not taking things personally is not one more way to blame ourselves for everything. It is not to and it's also not to let anyone off the hook. It is to help us to focus on the most effective ways to respond when we are in emotional distress. So what I'm saying there is that the hurt becomes the cue that tells us to pay attention. We don't just need to be rescued immediately from that. Ways when we were helping with is ways to help us learn more about ourselves and specifically what you've been talking about today, how to take better care of ourselves.
That's right.
So there's more to that, but that's the beginning. It's the idea. This is all about using the pain as a cue to say,
right.
Okay, it's that positive opportunism we talk about. What can I do to learn? How can I become better now?
So just read it to people one more time. I want people to really absorb what you just said. Read it one more time.
To teach not taking things personally is not one more way of how can I blame myself for everything. And it is not another way to let everyone else off the hook. It is to help us to focus on the most effective ways to respond when we are in emotional distress. Ways to help us learn more about ourselves and specifically how to take better care of ourselves.
And that's enough said, man. That's a great way to end our show today, Tom. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And everybody stay tuned. This is just the beginning of our discussion about emotional sobriety. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week.
And I hope we see you all on Thursday night for Alan's release party. Peace out, guys.
Tend your life, tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.